morning, guys. This is pre-algebra for Thursday, April the 2nd. Today we're going to talk about implied ratios. What are implied ratios? Implied ratios mean it doesn't just come out and say, here's your ratio, and here's what I need you to find. It's almost like it's a story problem. It's like something you're going to use. Ladies, when you make cookies or brownies, guys, when your mom makes cookies or brownies, maybe one of y'all like to cook, I don't know. Let's see, the recipe says you need 2 eggs and it'll make 42 cookies. But what happens if you're making them for your bus route and you need 100 cookies? How many eggs do you have to put in it then so that you can make enough cookies? Okay? That's an implied ratio because we're going to take what we know and what we need, and we're going to figure out how much the change is. Okay? The story problem in our book on lesson 79 on page 222 says, it took 2.5 eggs to make 140 cookies. Jenny wanted to make 1,680 cookies. How many eggs did she need? Just like in our ratios before, we have to make sure whatever we put on the top, in other words, whatever it stands for, that ratio, it needs to be on the top in both ratios. The same thing as on the bottom. Here, I put eggs to cookies. So over here, I put eggs to cookies, meaning my numbers for the eggs have to go on the top. My numbers for cookies has to go on the bottom. Okay? Now, let's continue to look at this. It said that she needed 2.5 eggs. So we're going to put 2.5 for the eggs on the top. How many cookies would 2.5 eggs make? Well, according to this, it makes 140. I'm going to turn this a little bit. I think that might help. 140 cookies. Okay? Now, she wants to make 1,680 cookies. So in my second ratio, I don't know the eggs, so I just put an X. Underneath, I put 1,680. Now that we have 2 ratios that are proportionate, what do? We cross multiply to get an equation. In this case, we're going to take 140 times X and get 140X. On the other side, we're going to take 2.5 and we're going to multiply that by 1,680. Now, the easiest way to do that, of course, is to change this to an improper fraction. So if I'm going to make it an improper fraction, I'm going to make it 5/2. Now, of course, I'm going to reduce this 2, make it a 1. And 2 goes into 16 8 times. 2 goes into 8 4 times and 0. So now I have 1,400x equals, but now I need to multiply. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 8 is 40 plus 2 is 42. So I have 140x equals 4,200. What do? Solve the equation. We're going to divide both sides because it says to multiply 140 by x. So we do the opposite of what we're told. We write 140. And we're going to divide by 140. This cancels, leaving us an x. And 4,220 divided by 140 is 30. She's going to need 30 eggs to make 1,680 cookies. Let's look at a couple more problems. Let's look over at your practice problem on page 223. It says the baker found out that 4 huge measures of sugar to make 13 confections. Now, confections are just candies, okay? So it takes 4 big measures of sugar to make 13 candies. The baker needs to make 143 confections or candies. How many huge measures of sugar are needed? Well, what's our ratio? We need 4 measures of sugar for 13 candies. Okay, how many candies does the baker want to make? 143. Where does the 143 go? On the top or on the bottom? It goes on the bottom, the same as this one. Both the 13 and the 143 represent the number of candies. The 4 represents the amount of sugar. I don't know the amount of sugar here, so I'm gonna put an X. How do I solve these two ratios that are now proportionate? How do I solve them? Cross multiply. So 13 times X gives me 13X. 4 times 143, well, 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16, plus the 1 you carried is 17. 4 times 1 plus the 5 is 572. Now, what do we do with this equation? 13x equals 572. Very simple. We're going to divide. We're going to divide each side by 13. This gets rid of the 13 here, leaving us only the x. Now we're going to divide. 13 into 57 is 4 times. Okay? And we're going to carry, and another 4 times. So x equals 44. So we need 44 scoops of sugar. Okay? Let's try a couple more. Look at number 1 in your book. Number 1, problem set 79. The shop uses 65 gallons of oil every 5 weeks. At this rate, how many gallons will the shop need for 1 year? Now let's remember, they put in parentheses for you that 1 year is 52 weeks. Okay, what's our first ratio? 5 gallons. Okay, 5 gallons is going to be used how often? I'm sorry, it's 5 weeks. It's 65 gallons, okay? So let's change that. Let's put gallons on the top. 65 gallons for 5 weeks. I want to know how many they're going to use in 1 year. I cannot put 1 year here because 1 year is not the same as 5 weeks. I have to make them the same unit. They have to both be in weeks. That's why your book put 52 in the book for you. Okay, so this is weeks, this has to be weeks. If this had been months, I would have needed a 12 here for months. Okay, they have to be the same. All right, so I don't know how much oil is needed, so I'm going to put an X. Now, what do? I cross multiply. Okay, 5 times X is going to be 5X. Then I'm going to have to take 65 times 52. Well, then we're going to do what? Okay, it's 5, because what we're really gonna do, and let's go over here, let's say 65 times 52, because I want you to all see this, not everybody multiplies super great. So 2 times 5 is 10, 2 times 6 is 12, plus 1 is 13, 5 times 5 is 25, 5 times 6 is 30, plus 2 is 32. So, in our problem, 5x equals 3,380. Now, what are we going to do with that? We're going to divide it. Divide this by 5. Okay, so x equals 5 goes into 33 6 times. 5 goes into 38 7 times. And 5 goes into 30 again 6 times. So x equals